there is something I would really like to share with you all today. As we're coming up on Halloween, there's a Buddhist sort of analog to Halloween about uh, feeding hungry ghosts. And we'll get to what that means after I paint the mandala in your imaginations. Do you know what a mandala is?
Roughly,
What do you,
the
what do you,
Tibetan monks do.
yeah. Tibetan monks create mandalas. Yeah. It's not exclusive to the Tibetan traditions. Their practice of creating them, like out of colored sand, to really embrace the impermanence of the image is cool. But anybody have any idea? No,
No.
no.
I thought it was I have some remembrance of like an Indian tradition type of
Hmm.
thing, but I thought that was not in sand, or is that like kind of a
Yeah,
muralistic kind of
yeah.
thing?
The Tibetans make them in sand, but that's not. That's just a. I mean, you can create a picture out of anything. Any media is fine, but a mandala is a teaching image, which carries lots of symbolism and is not meant. I mean, they are beautiful works of art, the ones that get left over many generations, but they are. Um, it's like a way of remembering words in a sutra, words from the Buddha, in a way of speaking, that's captured in an image. And there are smaller images, which are sort of like icons, and those are called ashtamangala, and those are like a teaching, like a metaphorical image. Like there's often an image of two fish, and you're like, what's the two fish thing mean? It actually has a really profound meaning of freedom to move in the sea of samsara from teacher to teacher or teaching to teaching without fear of drowning. In the world of suffering, it's okay to change what what your practice is basically what they mean. Um, but anyway, a mandala is a large collection of iconography which carries all kinds of meaning and metaphor and ways of understanding. And so there's a really beautiful mandala in lots of traditions of Buddhism, represented in different ways. But generally, there's a big wheel, and inside the wheel there are six divisions, and inside those six divisions, they represent realms of rebirth. And this talk will also kind of encompass what the heck is reincarnation, in as much as I understand it, or how I tend to how I tend to regard the idea of reincarnation. Um, Actually, I want to interrupt there and ask, what does reincarnation mean to you?
Hmm.
Anybody?
Uh, I guess I think that reincarnation is like after the physical form comes to an end, the spiritual form comes back or comes through in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, my printer is going off.
It's reproducing leftover spiritual forms.
It might be, might be.
Connor, do you have any impression of what reincarnation might mean?
I mean, I guess again, it's kind of in the Hindu Indian tradition. My understanding is like you keep coming back here until you figure out what you needed to figure out,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
and I guess I do in some sort of way um, subscribe to that, but probably not in the like Hinduistic or like case system type of model.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Good. Greg.
Uh, I'm not really sure. I think my take on it is that everything is um, conditions that are being created and ceasing, and so reincarnation would be the conditions that have been created in your lifetime that have not been resolved And what that flows into, I do not know, or what it looks like, but there is a continuation of some conditioned karma that was created in your life that has not yet ripened and must ripen at some point. But I don't really think about it very much.
Yeah. I agree with all of you. I think that you're all pointing at different parts of the elephant, so to speak, as a bunch of blind folks encountering an elephant for the first time. I personally, I hold a regard which says the leftover Hindu taste of the idea of reincarnation, of, this life ends, this body, this state of existence where you can interact with the concept of an Eshin or a Justin or whatever you want to call me. This ends, and then that something is left and continues in perhaps another being, some other form, another time. That's one. Scientifically, no one can verify whether that happens or doesn't. And so I don't feel that there's any value, any inherent value to concern ourselves too much with that. It might be fun to sort of imagine about it, but it can't be verified. So why worry about it, is what I think. That's one. And that of course that encompasses, an idea of afterlife or what have you. It's not important. What's important is right now, as far as I'm concerned. And then two, there is another way of understanding rebirth, which is much simpler and verifiable. And that's sort of where this great mandala comes into play for a lot of compartmentalizing our way of understanding and our way of regarding rebirth and death. So in this mandala, there's a big circle, and there are 6 compartments in the circle. And inside each compartment, there is a Buddha. That's an important detail to remember. It's a bit like Where's Waldo? In certain ones, the Buddha may be really difficult to find. In some of them, the Buddha may be pretty obvious. And there's a reason for that too. And almost always, if you Google this afterwards, you'll see that there's a big demon sort of holding the wheel. And the reason I don't want to show you, I want to explain it to you, is because it's more fun when you paint the mandala in your own imagination. So, big circle, there's a Buddha in each of the 6 compartments of the circle, and there's a big demon holding it with big gnarly claws, and usually his head's poking over it, and his feet are also kind of claws, sometimes holding the circle. And he's got gnarly fangs, and it looks pretty wild. And you think, so is the world controlled by the devil? Well, I guess if you're stuck on Christianity, perhaps. But in this case, I believe that this demon is actually Mara, which is in the old Buddhist stories, is a sort of a nefarious character who presents various temptations and distractions and doubts to the Buddha, particularly at that moment when he was sitting under the Bodhi tree, that fabled moment where he achieved perfect enlightenment. Anyuttara Sambyaku Sambodai. That's like the Japanese way. It sounds really cool, right? So, but actually, Mara coming and presenting sexual temptation and indulgence or doubt is not a separate being from the Buddha himself. Mara is thought. If we take for granted that thought itself is delusion, no matter how good or beneficial the thought may be, to think about the thing is not the thing itself, and therefore inherently deluded. And Mara becomes a sort of an embodiable definition of the way we have doubts, the way we have fears, the way we have uh, desires that are sort of very, very difficult or impossible to cut off. Even the desire to do zazen because we have a sense that it might be good for us is itself a desire, a thought, and therefore a delusion. But that delusion, if we don't have that, then we don't sit. So in a way, we exist completely whole with our delusions in a sense. It's sort of the ground on which we stand. So Mara is holding all of these 6 realms. We'll get to that a little bit later. So inside the very first realm, at the very top, is a god realm. And the god realm is full of heavenly beings who live a very, very, very long time. They look very beautiful. They live in a land full of fruit and all kinds of bounty, and the food is delicious. Everything goes their way, and they have lots of, they're very strong. And then the next realm is the Titan realm, which is kind of like the the Grecian idea of gods and titans, except in the Grecian thing, like the titans are the predecessors of the gods, like Kronos and all those guys. In this way, the titans are actually after the gods in a sense. They have all the imbued power and strength and long life of a god, but they're angry and they're greedy and they're frustrated. They live in a world of bounty, but they're kind of unsatisfied with it, and there's a few things that bug them. And then below the Titans, there's the human realm, where we live in a world of bounty, but there are also sort of deserts and desolate places, and there's a certain kind of half and half element of enjoyability and suffering in our existence, and it's a really balanced place. We have the capacity. We don't have much power as a human being, but we have the capacity to, in contrast to the next realm, we have the capacity to sit down quite easily because of the balance of suffering and pleasure in our lives. So the next realm below the human realm is the animal realm. And animals, as we all know, are sort of, they operate more simply than we do. And of course, on varying scales. So you have really advanced animals like dolphins and the great apes who exhibit some kind of creativity and some volitional control and a notable intelligence, which we can even detect without language, all the way down to like a chicken. Like if you've ever looked at a chicken or watched a chicken, I'm pretty sure that if somebody watched a chicken for 24 hours, even if they've never written a code in their life, like in an afternoon, they would be able to write down all the rules and operations of a chicken. That's how really simple something as stupid as a chicken is. But the animal realm encompasses all of that. The difference between animals and humans is that animals are often really profoundly driven by sort of the desire to eat, the desire to procreate. And when something that they desire is presented in front of them, they often just go straight to it. There's no moment of consideration. There's no, should I eat this now or should I eat this later? There's no forbearance. We're humans. We do that. We don't all do that. We don't all always do that, but we can. And probably much easier for us than it is for most other animals. And that's kind of the largest difference as far as I understand it. Then below the animals, we have a realm of hungry ghosts. And the hungry ghosts are beings who live in the same kind of world that humans and animals live in. So there's bounty everywhere. There's a little bit of suffering, sort of desolate areas in that world too. But no matter the delicious fruit that they eat or the clean and cool water that they drink, everything that passes into their mouth becomes blood or pus, or they drink delicious wine or water and it becomes fire in their mouths as soon as it passes their lips. And they're often depicted with a very spindly neck with a bangle around it, like a collar that keeps very, very tight, so they can't even swallow, even if they could get something in their mouths. And their belly is really big and fat, but their arms and legs are really spindly and skinny. And they look pretty gray and sad. And because of that existence of no matter what nourishment they receive, it becomes suffering. They're constantly unsatisfied, but also constantly seeking. And then below, well, the next realm, it's not quite below at this point, but going around the circle, the next one is a hell realm where people are being tortured. Beings are being tortured, and sort of unfavorable circumstances are being forced on them. There's lots of images of demons torturing beings in these mandalas, which are all of the ways that you see the bad things being perpetrated on beings are become great metaphors for contemplation. But there is also a Buddha in that realm. There's a Buddha in all these realms, and an important thing to remember is that though there are all these 6 realms, none of them are permanent. Even the gods who think they're immortal, that's just a mistaken idea. In fact, it's recognizing their mortality, recognizing the smell of their own body is said to be the first fall from grace, as if you will, for gods to fall into the Titan realm. And then they become frustrated. They recognize that they don't live forever. They recognize that all their power isn't all encompassing. They can't just do anything they want. And then all the bounty and pleasure that they thought they had was actually, it's tainted with dissatisfactoriness. And then they get angry because they had it so good. And now why is it so bad? And then below that, we have us humans, we know we could, we have a really good time. We might be a god for a bit, and then we, get driven by our desires, and we know we're pretty much acting like an animal, but really we're operating in the middle. The Buddha's usually really big in the human realm. He's easy to see. And even more importantly than easy to see, he's easy to hear. The teachings are really easy to hear for a human. So in one way, this mandala becomes how we die and are reborn as various different things, as an animal for 500 lifetimes, or as a god for 1 lifetime, or what have you. But actually, these states, the way I tend to regard it within my own life, my living experience, is that each of these states are informed by the pattern and sort of genre of thoughts that are arising in us at a given time, can be compartmentally explained as one of these 6 realms. And because of the nature of thought, thoughts come and thoughts go. Each state is impermanent, and we move from one to the other sort of pretty much unpredictably. We can see patterns, but sometimes we're surprised when we're a weird esoteric word for the movement between these 6 realms is called transmigration. We have a certain genre of thoughts, which are usually based on a stimulus. For example, like I don't know, a tax collector calling, and then you begin to really be concerned. You might be in which realm? somebody calling and tormenting you,
Well,
poking. Yeah, you go right straight to hell, right? Or like you're dating someone, you're having a really good time, and then they do something horrible and they break your heart. That's kind of a hell realm. But then after that, as you sort of you enter the stages of grief, the end of a relationship, and then you go hang out with a friend, and the friend's like, oh, today was the best day, the weather was great, we went to the beach and had a picnic. And then you're just like, just F your good day. I just, I don't have good days. That might be, you might be a hungry ghost at that point. No matter what beautiful nutrition you take in, it all becomes bitter and gross. And we all know people who kind of abide in that realm. Bitter, awful, like awful to be around people. They're difficult because no matter what good thing you give them, there's always a complaint, because everything is turning to blood and pus in their mouth, and they're never satisfied. And then of course, we know animals. Connor, who has rabbits, like I have rabbits. I once asked AI if human intelligence is 10 and a chicken is 1. What is a rabbit? It said 1.5.
I was going to be nice and say 2 or 3, but that's probably accurate.
Yeah. But we can obviously see how animals behave. And I hope that you can all obviously see how humans also tend, without any practice in higher thinking, to behave much the same as animals from time to time. When you come home from work and you're just like, I want a snack. And you eat the snack and you're like, maybe I don't need that many sweet things in a day, but I just did it. That's just an animal eating the food that it wants to eat. And animals can't stop. It's really difficult to stop. But we can as humans. And animals can stop, but it's not. It's sort of a blessing of the state of being an animal ending that they find themselves stopped. They can then see the Buddha. They can then maybe just a little bit hear the Buddha and understand the teaching. And I mean the Buddha as a metaphor for wisdom in this case. And in any of these realms, recognizing that there is a Buddha there is almost recognizing that we're never not in the same realm, whether we be gods, animals, humans, or tortured beings. Even we may become the demons doing the torturing. The Buddha is there to teach us all. And in a way, you can imagine that every being in every compartment of this mandala they all have a perspective which can reveal wisdom. They just have to remember that it's there. And so I say these are genres of thought based on the idea that Mara, the big demon that's always depicted holding the wheel, is thought. From a Western Christian perspective, we tend to have this sort of like demon equals the devil, which equals something we should fight against or destroy or kill. But that's pretty exclusive to the modern formation of Abrahamic traditions. Actually, probably for the longer period in human history, demons are just thought of, oh, this is just another thing. We coexist with this, whatever that sort of problematic or evil, however we may define it. It's sort of just, it's around. You have to deal with it. And in that way, if Mara, who tempts and tries to deceive and confound living beings, is no other thing than the pattern of thought inside a living being, then it's Mara who sort of informs the genre of thoughts in a way. You can regard Mara as being the cause of moving between the 6 realms. Does that sort of got it?
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, yeah, I can see how, yeah, you can move, fluidly through all the realms
Mm-hmm.
on a daily basis, um,
Yeah.
on where your mind state is.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine times when your mind state, I like that word, Connor, thank you, has changed and you know why?
I'm sorry, why the mind state has changed from
Yeah,
one?
like so whatever state you're in, you start whatever that is. It doesn't matter what it is, but then it changes to another one. Can you think of times in your daily life when it changed and that you recognize why it changed?
I mean, certainly just from becoming aware and being present, letting go of like anxiety or depression that's going on.
That's one. Chelsea? A concrete example is also good if you can think of one.
I'm thinking about how, like recently, I've been on a quest for some new to me clothes, and just sort of, I mean, it's sort of silly, but yeah, like going from, okay, like this is a worthwhile activity to do, to not feeling great about it and feeling, yeah, maybe more, I don't exactly know which state it would be, but yeah, like kind of being in a bad mood where it's hard to see that there are perfectly fine and good things happening, and just feeling maybe like a hungry ghost.
Greg?
The easiest ones for me to come up with are always when people are doing stuff that's making you angry, and then you find out some information about what's going on with that person, and then instantly you're like, oh, that makes sense. And then like the anger just disappears immediately. Like if you see someone driving all crazy, and then later you like read the news and it's like, oh, a person rushes to the hospital to deliver 6 babies at once, and you're like, oh, that makes sense why they were driving like crazy. And I don't know, that's kind of what I think of whenever like there's always that moment where you get some additional information and then everything makes sense, and then any emotion you're feeling about the situation kind of just evaporates.
So that's a lovely example. I had a funny joke about that in my head as you were saying it. I was like, is he going to say Florida man has explosive diarrhea and rushes to the hospital? But
That would qualify.
yeah, right. Yeah, that's a good example of being set free of perhaps you were a titan for a moment. You thought you're driving, you're having a good time, you're in control of this big vehicle, and then all of a sudden things go out of your control. You get angry about it, but then you realize that, oh, there's some other thing happening here. That might have been, in one way, a Buddha appearing to you. That sort of antidotal sort of wisdom arising. Some information has come to light, a realization is had, and then you're no longer subject to that genre of thought that you were once in. That's a really important point for how we move from one to the other. And if we know that that kind of an antidote exists, no matter what the genre of our thought is, then we can seek it if we remember that we can seek it. That sounds redundant, but that's a really important thing. It's easy to forget that we can seek it. It's easy for a human to sit down. Yes, Greg?
But isn't it bad to seek things?
That's a good point. However, that if all thought is delusion, fundamentally, a misunderstanding of reality, we've compartmentalized all of our experiences. It has become thought. It is not the reality, the real thing. It's words and concepts. And that's fundamentally not the real thing, objectively speaking, scientifically speaking. It's prove me wrong. Then that delusion, a thought, becomes the ground on which we stand. If you fall down and your face is on the ground, you've hit the ground, or the ground has hit you. How do you stand up? On the
Slowly.
ground. Well, slowly, yeah, yeah. But the first thing is you're supported by the ground that you fell down onto. It's the gravity pulling you down to the ground which gives you the ability to stand up. So in that way, that baseline of having a thought of pursuing wisdom, is the Japanese term for this is hotsubo daishin, arousing a will to the way. That thought is the ground on which we stand. And recognizing that even it is a delusion, it is a thought. It propels us. If you didn't have the thought, you wouldn't do the practice, which you wouldn't have the way-seeking mind. You wouldn't be interested in being other than an animal. You wouldn't be interested in not suffering or not being bitter and unsatisfied. You wouldn't be interested in, maybe living in a land of bliss and then realizing I'm a stinky old bag of skin and bones is not the greatest thing in the world. You wouldn't have any way to meet all of those different states. You would just be constantly subject to them. But there are a lot of people who are constantly subject to them, and they don't even notice the pattern. And in that way, that's a living, breathing, every day to day, month to month, year to year, minute to minute, birth and death, reincarnation in one of these 6 realms. Remembering our capacity to see and hear the teachings. I'm going to say, like, the classical Buddhist thing would be to say the teachings of the Buddha or Dharma. But if we even took out those religious words, you just said to remember how nature works, how nature plays out, and then to remember that we have the gift of being able to notice and appreciate it, that sets us free from being wholly slave to these genres of thought, which Mara, holding the whole mandala, is just a manifestation, sort of corporeal manifestation of what thought is. Delusion, a demon.
You say thought.
Mhm.
Do you also mean other mental states such as like emotions or feelings, or do you purely mean cognitive thought?
Absolutely, it absolutely includes emotions. Emotions in and of themselves represent the realms.
The realms.
So, I mean, for example, when you're angry, are you a titan? When you're feeling like a victim, are you in a hell realm? When you're in love, are you a god? When it's your birthday and all your friends show up, aren't you also a god then? In a god realm, in a heavenly realm, and I say God sounds kind of weird, but like to say like in a heavenly kind of situation, it's great. But also recognizing that this too will pass, is kind of a gift to not being stuck in that realm. Although it sounds kind of nice to be stuck in a heavenly realm, doesn't it?
But you can't be.
Yeah, ultimately, no matter how hard you try, you fall out of it. But if you fall out without knowing that you're going to fall out, without regarding the impermanence of that heavenly realm, then you get angry and you become a titan. And it's sort of a forced pattern of reincarnation or transmigration from realm to realm. You just cycle. And so like in one way, the Hindu leftover explanation of the cycle of samsara, the cycle of birth and death, is like, oh, you've got unfinished business, you come back in a new body. But that would suppose that there is a permanent self. I'm not, one, no one can verify this. And two, because no one can verify this, I'm not sure it's important to even imagine that there might be a permanent self which exists apart from, or like in the vessel of this body, which we tend to identify as me. I am nothing without Greg. I am nothing without Chelsea. I'm a completely different person without the influences of you two in this life. And so, exactly what am I? What is this self? Doesn't seem like it's very much at all. If removing one small part of its experience completely changes it, the whole thing is just an illusion, isn't it? An illusion, but it's also real. But it's also an illusion. The illusion is real. Chelsea, how are you feeling? You're making funny smiles.
Well, because I mean, yeah, it's a little funny. I'm thinking about a documentary I watched earlier this week. Here in Portland, there was something that happened for the first time called Workfest. And it was all about this man that was enslaved and was part of the Lewis and Clark expedition.
Oh,
And it was really such an interesting event. But they had this premiere of the documentary and then a little Q&A sort of panel discussion afterwards. And one of the things that they talked about is how, or one of the things that was important about this documentary was telling York's story. And, this is a person that lived 200 years ago or more. And so just like hearing you talk about who we are in relationship to each other is really interesting as I think about this person that we'll never know, but has had this influence. And so I don't know, it was just sort of something that has been on my mind. It was a really good film and really interesting to think about the way that our world is influenced by so many knowns and unknowns. So that's one thought. But then another kind of question is, are all mandalas the same? It's all depicting these 6 worlds?
No, they are not all depicting the 6 realms, but that is a really, I'll say common, a really, really important, how do I say this? Very carefully regarded mandala. If you Google Buddha's 6 realms, this image will pop up. And when you look at it, there's, if you contemplate it, I mean, I believe, I mean, I can't say this with 100% certainty, but I believe that, for example, one of the reasons that the Tibetans have that beautiful tradition of sort of, like like basting a cake, they use some sort of a vessel which they put this colored sand in, and it allows the sand to drop, and they sort of paint these beautiful, intensely colored mandalas out of pigment or sand, is so that they can see it. And in the practice of knowing each icon inside the mandala, there's a reason for its shape, for its color, for its position, and sort of proportion. And studying each part of it gives us a kind of a tool, a metaphorical tool for understanding our lived human experience. And so those things are, people look at them and contemplate it. But, if you only see it in terms of the sort of leftover Hindu thing from which it comes originally, using certain iconography to explain certain things that are being borrowed from Hindu traditions, that's maybe limited, actually. Maybe the Buddha wasn't trying to use those things at face value. They're just a metaphor using things that people at that time were very familiar with, sort of innately. Everybody maybe read or heard pieces of the Bhagavad Gita, and so they knew all these old stories. And so using Mara and these demons who would torture people, and the concept of gods and titans and humans and animals, and recognizing all of that interconnectivity is part and parcel to perhaps how many people in Hindu, under the Hindu umbrella, understood the world. And so use those images to point them at something. And our capacity, by virtue of being exposed to lots of different ways of thinking, is different than, I'm not going to say better, but different than the average Joe Blow 2,600 years ago in India, or even 2,000 years ago in India, or even 1,500 years ago in China. We have a different perspective, and so it's important to regard all of this iconography, one, knowing its context in the time that it sort of comes from, but also having a way to look at it and reflect ourselves in it, so that we can use the teaching parts to help us when we need it.
Yeah.
I don't know that I know I said a lot there, and I don't know if I said anything at all. Sorry.
No, thank you.
You're welcome. That lays a ground for the Halloween connection, which will come up another time, because the Halloween connection is a part of this mandala. In the space where the demon Mara is none other than, in the story of the Buddha, Mara is none other than the Buddha. In our own lives, Mara, this sort of mischievous, not necessarily malicious, but sort of conniving, confounding phenomenon, is regarding that as thought itself, creates an inseparability. We can't kill it. You can't kill delusion. You have to coexist with it. And that sort of creates a different level of radical acceptance than, and I'm just going to go with this analogy, than the concept of sort of like, God and the devil in Abrahamic traditions, or Jesus and the devil, or even Jesus and what was his name? Judas. Those. It's not that there needs to be this battle for one to kill or to control the other, but rather that actually the salvation, I said that word, that we work toward in our own practice from suffering and discomfort and unfavorable conditions and circumstances, is only achievable when we recognize our oneness with that too, with delusion, with the inevitability, for example, of discomfort, dissatisfaction, suffering, and also recognizing that nothing is permanent it comes and it goes. Is that about? I think that's about all I want to do with that for today. But yeah. Any last questions?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Should we wait to look at the look up the image?
No, by all means, go look at it. It's cool.
I think you're right. It is a gift to have you allow us to imagine what it looks like. So thanks for that.
You're welcome. Welcome. Yeah.
Mm.
You know, in my, when after you pointed me at Buddhism, Chelsea, did I tell you that, Greg?
No.
Actually, I was just being a weird hippie guy for years and years, and Chelsea was like, "You kind of seem kind of Buddhist," you know. She was taking a religions course in college, and said, "You should go to this temple. I went to this temple to write a report or something like that, right, Chelsea?"
Yeah, I think so.
And I said, "No, I can't be Buddhist. That's too cliche. That doesn't even make sense." And so she took me to this place, and then I said, "Well, this looks weird. I don't know. They're sitting in chairs. This isn't my image of Buddhism or whatever." And I decided I should probably just. I really don't know anything about this, so I should go a whole bunch of times to get an idea about what this is, and that's how I kind of got stuck, in a really good way of getting stuck. But in that getting stuck, a lot of the images, this one included, this mandala of the 6 realms, came into my view, and I saw it, and I thought there was something to it, and a lot of pieces I couldn't understand. Seeing it without anyone giving me sort of the tools with which to regard its various attributes. So I thought, man, maybe actually teaching it is more beneficial to have it as a thing in your own imagination before you see it in the way that people have painted it for hundreds or thousands of years or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, go check it out. Google it.
Great. I will.
Yeah. And then if you have questions about it, we can maybe next time we'll do an image search, and I'll share the screen, and then we can all look at it and talk about it together.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Okay.
Next week we leave for Portugal today, so I am planning on coming, but I may not make it.
Thank you for coming.